Alright, before jumping in, a few words about today's video sponsor. I am happy to be working with the Massdrop community commerce platform, which provides great deals on a pretty wide range of products, but specifically gaming hardware as well. They have lower prices than Amazon in a lot of instances, so feel free to check out the general link to their platform down below. More specifically, I have been using the Sennheiser PC37X headphones for the past few days, which can be found on their site, and it's a really good headset. I could rattle off some of the specs and describe all of the details of why they are good, but a lot of viewers won't care about that really. Instead, I will just say that within the past year, I've had 5 different headsets. One had a bad mic, one was uncomfortable, a couple didn't have good audio direction, and were bad for FPS games, and so on and so forth. But the 37Xs, which were sent to me by the Massdrop community commerce platform, are easily the best set that I have used and are now my primary pair for all gaming, recording, and streaming needs. Alright, it's time for another Path of Exile build, and today we're doing a Death's Oath Astral Plate Triple Curse Chaos Damage Trickster. Now, why Trickster, you may say, and not Occultist? Well, the answer is simple, just to be different. I didn't really want to run something that was just brain dead and simple, like Righteous Fire Marauder or something similar, but a lot of people like that playstyle of being able to just run through mobs and watch them all die without even touching them, and that just seemed appealing, so I figured let's do that, but Chaos Damage and Death's Oath and Trickster, even though Occultist is also probably really good, but without further ado, let's just jump right into it. I'll start off with gear, and this is not the cheapest build in the world. A couple of these pieces are going to run you quite a few Chaos, maybe even a couple of Exalts. So this isn't necessarily a league starter, but it's also not super expensive. It's not even up near the 10-15 Exalt range, which some builds are at. It's pretty simple to construct and will cost you a couple of Exalts to push into true top tier endgame content. But to start off with, we have Breath of the Council Carnal Scepter. This is probably the best in slot weapon for this build. It's hard to deny the increased chaos damage, increased area of effect, which also will apply to our aura, but we'll talk about that in a second. And chaos skills have 40% increased skill effect duration. This is all fantastic. So Breath of the Council Carnal Scepter, a really great scepter to have. Then for our shield, we have the Unshattered Will, but that's not necessarily required. This gives you a really cool synergizing bonus with increased damage with channeling skills, obviously, because we will be using Blight. I'll talk about that in a minute. It also gives you this, whatever this guy is here, this Harbinger of Focus. So when you are using your Blight skill, the Harbinger will buff you sometimes, which, gives you some resistance to damage and makes it so you can't be stunned. And it's a cool synergy, and it's a really nice shield. Has good all elemental resistances, which is fantastic. It's 24% in total, and that will help you with the rest of your gearing, but it's not required. You don't have to use that shield. In fact, there is another shield, the Magna Eclipse, right here. This is also perfectly viable and extremely cheap. So this shield can run you anywhere between 20 to 40 to 60 or 80 chaos, depending on where you are in the league. The Magna Eclipse is going to be like 2 or 3 chaos. It's extremely easy to make yourself. I don't remember the names of them. You can look it up on the wiki, but there is a solar shield and a lunar shield, and you just go with one fusing orb to any vendor, and you combine the solar shield and the lunar shield and into a Magna Eclipse. So it's really easy to get, and that's probably the best option early on in the game. I mean, it requires level 70, but until you get Unshattered Will, Archon Kite Shield. For the rest of your gear, it's pretty straightforward in the sense of getting elemental resistances, but there's a little bit of a monkey wrench here because you do need to get some chaos resistance in order to make the Death's Oath plate work. I have a terrible enchant on here, 40% increased flame totem damage. I'm just cycling through enchants on this helmet until I get something better. This character can easily farm Uber Lab without even breaking a sweat. But yeah, you want a lot of life here. You want some resistances, and look for chaos resistance if you can get it. Then for my rings, I have I'm going to butcher this name, Dweedri's Damning Power Ring, which gives some all elemental resistances, but not very much, and enemies can have 1 additional curse. There are better ways to get access to that effect, so we can run our triple curses, because we are getting another curse from the passive tree, but this is the simplest and cheapest way. So picking up one of these rings is going to cost you next to nothing, and it does do what we need, and we're able to cap out all of our other stuff without it, without resistances here. And we are lacking in the life category, but we're compensating for that with a couple other mechanics, like having some energy shield, and we are going to pick up Mind Over Matter. So this is where you get your third curse from in its most simple form. On your other ring, I've got some all elemental resistances, lightning resistance, but this is a really bad ring too. It's only got 41 max life. I could do some upgrading. So there's further heights to which this build can be pushed. And then we have an Impresence Onyx Amulet. Now this is extremely important, and it also is pricey. A couple of exalts probably. 34% increased damage over time. That's going to affect all of our different, damage mechanics that we're using. It has chaos damage, it has max life, it has chaos resistance, all juicy stats there. And 100% reduced despair mana reservation. That's what's important. That's going to allow us to run a triple curse setup and still have a ton of excess mana to use with Mind Over Matter. So having this amulet is very important. On to our gloves, Allelopathy, the Sorcerer Gloves. These will give you access to 22 Blight skill, and every socketed gem in those gloves will apply as a support to that Blight. So you effectively have a 5-link Blight from these gloves. And it gives energy shield, increased area of effect. That's helpful for us. And it has 29% increased hinder duration. And hinder is also an important stat that we'll come back to. So those are very important. These are build enabling gloves. You absolutely need these. Then I crafted these boots. They're fine. Fire resist, movement speed, lightning resist, max life, cold and lightning. Good boots. And then a belt that has some chaos resistance at 25%, has fire, cold, max life. You're just going to be looking on a belt to get some chaos resistance, max life, and elemental resistances. And now it's time to talk about our chest piece. This is the crux of the build, if you will. Has all elemental resistances, which is great. Has 48 to all attributes, which helps contribute itself to the requirement of 180 strength. That's gonna be a little bit difficult to get, but once you've unlocked 180 strength, then you can put on the chest piece, and then the chest piece gives you 48 strength. So once you can wear it, it kind of compensates for itself. Has a decent amount of armor, has a decent amount of max life, and then you take 450 chaos damage per second for 3 seconds on kill, but you have level 20 death aura. Now what level 20 death aura is just an aura that deals chaos damage over time. Right here, death aura. It deals 11,000 chaos damage per second, and then when I have killed something, it will deal 450 chaos damage per second to me for 3 seconds. And we're compensating for that damage by having high chaos resistance and a few other ways in the passive tree, but I'll talk about that later on. Every single gem that you socket into this chest piece will support that aura if it is capable of doing so. But the important thing that you need to do is get Arcane Surge. So you can have a six socket chest piece here, and the ideal spread of sockets is 3 blue, 2 green, and 1 red. Now I have one pesky red socket right here that has vitality in it, so I'm essentially running on a 5 socket chest piece right now, and I'm still able to do almost anything that my character can reach at the moment. I'm not doing true endgame bosses just yet, but the build absolutely can, and all the other content is a breeze. It's completely easy. If vitality was a blue socket, I could put in increased area of effect, and that would increase the clear speed it has for maps. So the ideal composition is 3 blue, 2 green, 1 red, but that's going to run you a pretty penny. It's going to be pretty expensive, so you don't necessarily need that, but it's good to have. You can run with a 5 socket though, it works just as well. Now the important thing is Arcane Surge. What this does is it's got the duration tag. So Arcane Surge, after spending a total of 345 mana with supported skills, it grants 90% more spell damage, but that doesn't necessarily matter because you're not spending mana with the Death Aura. This never spends mana, but it has duration in the tags, and this right here, the Death Aura has duration in the tags. So this can apply, and then because this is applying, the rest of them can apply as well. Void Manipulation is more chaos damage. And reduce elemental damage, but the more chaos damage helps. That's a very important one. Then you have less duration, and because it's a duration tag on top of a duration tag, you can then have 19% more damage, even though the effect is less, or it is a decreased duration, but the effect is constant around you. So you can decrease the effect's duration without actually decreasing anything, and you get the 19% more damage. So it's a bit of a weird interaction, but it works. Swift Affliction, yet again, it's more damage over time, multiplicative, very good. But you have reduced duration of supported skills, but again, it doesn't really do anything. We don't get the negative, but we do get the positive, so it's a It's a cool interaction. Then we have efficacy with 90% more spell damage, more damage over time, and increased skill effect duration. So all of these are going to support extremely well. These are the best in slots. There's nothing you want to replace there. The only thing is switching that to a blue socket instead of vitality. I would then have, and I'm just leveling this up on the side for almost no apparent reason. This isn't part of the build. You would just want a blue socket with increased area of effect. For my other gem setups, I have increased area of effect, Wither, and Spell Totem. This allows me to summon a Spell Totem casting the Wither debuff on a bunch of enemies around, and that stacks, so that's just going to synergize with all of our other damage, and it's a really easy 3-link to get, not expensive at all. Then for my movement skill, over here I have Fortify, I have Shield Charge, and I have Faster Attacks, and this will allow us to move around the map plenty quickly. Of course, you can put a 4th link in there if you want. You can put it in some other slot like your helmet or your gloves, or your boots. I'm sorry, your gloves are taken. But that's your movement skill setup. Just a basic one there. Fortify's nice, and Shield Charge is effective, and Faster Attacks just makes you move faster. And then we have in our helmet Contagion. That's not super important. It's just another tiny little boost to the damage that you do. I have Cast on Damage Taken, but I have leveled this up very high, and there's a reason for that. Cast on Damage Taken at level 67, level 17, but that's where I've capped it out. And then a Summon Stone Golem, which requires level 66 and is level 17. And this gives us 95 life regenerated per second. And that's actually really, really helpful for dealing with the Death's Oath negative effect. So I do recommend putting in a Cast on Damage Taken and then leveling up a Stone Golem with it. And then I have Molten Shell, which can also cast, but you can swap that out for something else if you want. You can put Immortal Call there to help deal with physical damage, but we're not leeching super quickly. So Immortal Call, you know, even leveled up isn't going to do all that much for us. But Contagion and Molten Shell can be swapped out on a whim. Down here in the boots, we have Enfeeble, we have Temp Chains, we have Despair, and we have Blasphemy. Blasphemy lets us cast all 3 of these as auras, and normally they would reserve our entire mana pool, having Enfeeble, Despair, and Temp Chains, but because of our Impresence Amulet, Despair is free, therefore we're only getting the reduction of 2 of these auras, Temp Chains and Enfeeble, so we have the extra mana. Now, Enfeeble and Temp Chains together are where the survivability of this build comes from, because it is fairly squishy at 4,400 health, but we are compensating in other areas. But all of the enemies near us are going to be both enfeebled and slowed with Temporal Chains, and then they're also going to be taking vastly increased chaos damage because of Despair and because of Temp Chains extending the effect of our skills. So that's where the survivability comes from, and this is an integral setup with 3 blue, 1 green. Then in the gloves, because all of these skill gems support the level 22 Blight, we have Swift Affliction, more spell damage over time. We have Controlled Destruction, reduced critical strike chance, which we don't need, and then more spell damage. Efficacy, again, more spell damage, more damage over time, and skill effect duration, and Void Manipulation for more chaos damage. This is where almost all of our single target is coming from, this essentially 5-linked Blight, so that is core to the build. For Flasks, there's a ton of possibilities. I'm running something here that is immune to curses during Flask effect, but really, honestly, there's no excuse for my Flask bar looking like this. It's just because I'm lazy and I haven't decked it out yet. You can spend as much currency as you want on getting cool Flasks. I do have an series. I have 2 at series, and then I have 2 movement. I haven't even really needed Flasks for hardly any content thus far. But I would encourage people to pull up a list of unique Flasks and find things that synergize well. But again, this looking like it does is not indicative of the rest of the build. It's just because I haven't really done that yet, and it hasn't really been necessary. The build is strong enough to complete almost anything without caring about your Flasks, so that's something. The damage can be boiled down to 2 parts. You have the Death Aura, which is what you're going to be using for mapping and just running by things and everything will just die near you. And then you have Blight for single target, and then you can also drop down your Wither Totem whenever you really need to buff up your single target DPS. It deals 9,874 for my current setup per second, and then it can stack up to 20 times, has 20 different layers. It really is something that will ramp up pretty fast, and once it starts going, you'll be able to see that it drops down single target bosses like no other. It's very effective, but mostly Death Aura is what you're going to be using for delving or for mapping or for anything really other than super high health single target bosses. Another option is to slot in Obliteration, but what that requires you to do is switch your movement skill away from Shield Charge. Shield Charge here, and over to Lightning Warp or some other form of movement, or maybe just super high base move speed for some players, even though that's uncommon. But you can swap in an Obliteration, and that will increase your mapping speed and actually allow you to clear giant packs of enemies in a split second as everything detonates. But I think a better option is Breath of the Council, because it just allows you to use Shield Charge and just makes the quality of life for the build a little bit better. But I do have an identical gem setup in an Obliteration, just in case, I'm doing certain maps where the mob density is just right, so I can, pop all of them at the same time. So that's just a side note I wanted to make. Jumping over to the passive tree, this requires a little bit of preparation, because the way Death's Oath works is you can't just necessarily switch right to it as soon as you get to level 68 and can equip it. You have to prepare for it. So I highly recommend going up through the chaos damage nodes, grabbing the life, coming down here to Methods of the Madness, again, more chaos damage. If you are really struggling on chaos resistance, you can grab these two nodes, but it's not super necessary. You'll be able to compensate for it with gear later on. I come down here to reduce mana reserved, though you don't necessarily need it as much once you have gotten the Impresence Amulet. Before you've gotten the Impresence Amulet, before you've spec'd into Mind Over Matter, which we're going towards over here, you may want to grab this so you can run Triple Aura. And while you are running Triple Aura, you can run Vitality instead of having one of the other curses. So that flexibility is there, but maybe spec out of this later on. Doesn't really matter. There's some freedom there. Then you're going to come through the damage over time nodes up into Growth and Decay. You want that life regeneration. That's going to help with Death's Oath. It's very important. You're going to go through the maximum energy shield and life written in blood all the way up to Atrophy. You're going to get chaos damage and this half of the wheel. You'll come over here. You can select this strength node if you need it in order to equip Death's Oath. It's there if it's necessary, but you may not need to, depending on what kind of gear you're running. Then you come down to the jewel socket, and we will be running Spreading Rot jewels. We're actually going to get two of them, Spreading Rot, one here and one here. What this does is not only boosts our chaos damage, but it also, enemies hindered by Blight take 25% increased chaos damage. So immediately when you're popping your Blight skill, you're putting down a debuff on those enemies that helps you clear them faster. So you can press it for 1 second and clear packs a lot faster. You don't even necessarily have to hold it. And then it has an increased hinder duration. So you're going to be slowing enemies down a ton with these Cobalt Jewels with Hinder on Blight, and then also with Temp Chains. Sometimes it looks like enemies are moving in slow motion. It's actually a really fun mechanic. You're going to come up here to increase area of effect, though you'll probably wait to grab that until you've grabbed a little bit more life and regeneration. Come through Heart and Soul for increased maximum life and maximum mana. Very good. Come all the way over, and don't grab Mind Over Matter just yet. Go up, turn up here, and go to Whispers of Doom to get that additional curse. And then that plus your ring means you have the triple curse setup that we enjoy so much in the build. Get Corruption, damage over time. There's some health here you can grab, which I advise getting as soon as possible. Come down through the jewel socket, come over to Shaper. That's life regenerated per second, very important. Grab both of these regeneration nodes here and the jewel socket. That's some chaos resistance there on the jewel and some max life. And then come into the Scion wheel as well. And then from Mind Over Matter, you want to come down into Sanctity. Retribution is a good node to grab on the way. And Amplify, increase area of effect, area damage. All of this is going to synergize well to as well, whatever language, words, hard. Mind Over Matter is next, and then once you have that, grab all the mana nodes behind it, and you're pretty much good to go. Currently, I'm at level 86. There's, of course, some more points that we're going to be putting in. Probably one here. Maybe we'll grab this life regeneration here. Not really sure what's coming after that. Potentially these chaos resistance nodes, because then we're entering into the realm of really nice life regeneration, not only compensating for Death's Oath, but also keeping us alive and giving us crazy survivability. But there's a couple different things. Maybe even some increased area of effect. Those extra nodes here, just to boost that aura's size. But, level 86 is a pretty good snapshot of where you want to be. For your Ascendancy, we're going with Trickster, and a lot of people are definitely wondering why Trickster over Occultist in the Witch Tree and starting there. You do get Profane Bloom with that route, which basically works like Obliteration does the wand, but in a passive node? Oh, the simple answer is I just didn't want to be like everyone else. I wanted to do something different, so that's why Trickster. Also, Swift Killer is really nice with the frenzy charges and increasing clear speed. And there's a couple other bonuses here that synergize quite well. I recommend going Weave the Arcane first. Increase maximum mana and movement skills cost no mana. That's just really nice for leveling. So as soon as you get your first lab done, boom, Weave the Arcane. The whole rest of your leveling experience is going to be way easier. But you don't have to go that if you don't want to. And then as soon as you've gone that, I do recommend going into Swift Killer. And then after Swift Killer, down into Patient Reaper. This gives us a ridiculous amount of survivability and clear speed and just quality of life. This is a great node. And then finally, Uber Lab over into Prolonged Pain. It's a decent damage boost, but there's not anything else really here that we want to grab, right? Harness the Void, we don't have any non-chaos damage, so we don't need Harness the Void. Ghost Dance is okay, Escape Artist is okay, but these really aren't fitting into our playstyle, so it's kind of a no-brainer that these 4 keystones are what we're grabbing. In the background right now, you can see me going through Uber Lab for the first time on this character. I take down Argus like it is nothing. Because of Hinder and because of Temp Chains and because of Enfeeble, most single target physical damage bosses are just a complete joke. You can breeze right through them. And then really anything that you can kite at all, you can kite so much more effectively because of Blight, and you can just keep stacking, so it will never be an issue. The only time things are going to be an issue is if there's huge amounts of elemental damage coming at you from off screen or just from long distances away and it's hard to dodge and there's so much of it that you can't dodge. That's going to be one of the only things that causes you any problem. Taking down the final boss, again, very easy. Just stack Blight, even a couple stacks, and then move, couple stacks, move. Because you also have your aura dealing constant chaos damage and Despair, the curse, increasing the amount of chaos damage that you're dealing to them, and then Temp Chains extending the effect of the Blight when you are able to stack it. It just all comes together to create a really, really powerful build that can both map very fast and clear single target bosses extremely quickly as well. I'm also showing a little bit of me jumping into an unidentified red map here. Just jump in. Basically, the only thing you have to worry about is hexproof or curse immunity on enemies. If they have that, it's a substantial amount more difficult for you and this build. But if they do not have that, then pretty much anything is fair game. You can just run through, just shield charge into everything, and by the time you've run past it, it will most likely be dead. And with a few more Exalt investment in gear and some better items, it's just you can take it even further, even just a few more levels up to 92 with 6 or 7 or 8 more points in the passive tree. You could grab some more area of effect. You could grab some more damage over time. And if you do get the blue socket on your chest piece, unlike what I have, that's a huge boost to your area of effect. So in the end, if you actually go into area of effect with a lot of points and that blue socket, you're probably going to be clearing almost the entire screen with your Death's Oath aura. So it is quite cool in that regard, kind of the way Righteous Fire works, but way larger and chaos damage and just cooler and not as cookie cutter or simple or done to death by so many people. But yeah, just shield charge into things, clear it, and then when you do get to the single target, you drop down your Wither Totem, and then you stack Blight, and it's game over. You can just farm whatever you'd like to. There are a couple of bosses that this build really is just not capable of doing, like Curse Reflect. You just can't deal with Curse Reflect, because if a boss has that, or a high health enemy has immunity to curses, not only that, reflecting curses, then you're just not dealing enough damage to them. And it has a couple different pitfalls, right? It's not like a one-size-fits-all can clear everything in the game build. It's a little bit on the pricey side. It's not necessarily a league starter, but I thought it was fun. I thought it was different enough that it was worthy of making a video. And yeah, that's why I did it. If you have any feedback about the build, ways it can be pushed further or improved upon, or even feedback from me as a creator on how I can present information better, please drop a line in the comments down below. Again, I want to thank our sponsor, Massdrop, for working with the channel. The link down below to their platform will save gamers money. So regardless of your thoughts on me or the channel or this video, clicking that link can only benefit you and save some money. But it also benefits the channel, by the way. If you are in the market for an audio upgrade, the Sennheiser PC37Xs are top of the line and can be found on the platform as well. And I will personally be utilizing both Massdrop and the headset for quite a while to come. As always, there are other links in the description to consider consider if you want to get more involved at Upper Echelon. We have a Facebook group, a Discord server. I stream on Twitch once in a while. There is a merchandise store and much, much more. So take a look if you want, but I'll cut it there. Thank you for watching the video. And as always, have a nice night.